Being able to manage permissions at a site collection level, a site level, a list level, a folder level, an item level is certainly very powerful. But there are going to be times when maybe we want to globally apply permissions to an entire web application, maybe globally remove permissions, or also just simply want a little bit more control over how it is that our users are going to be able to apply permissions. And this is where we're going to take a look at in this lesson. The first thing that we want to take a look at is that people picker. Whenever somebody goes in to apply permissions, what they're going to do is they're going to use the people picker. Now, the catch with the people picker is that it's basically going to look throughout your entire Active Directory domain and any other provider that you may have set up. Now, this poses a little bit of a problem, because the people picker is going to pick up not just simply users, but it's also going to be able to pick up administrators, service accounts, and other types of accounts that really don't belong anywhere inside of SharePoint, or at the very least, I just don't want my users to be able to see them. So fortunately, we can go in and modify the way that the people picker behaves. Unfortunately, there is no UI for modifying the behavior of the people picker. In fact, there's not even a PowerShell commandlet available to us. The way that this is done is through STS-ADM. Now, STS-ADM is deprecated, it is going away, but it is, as of this moment, the only way that we can modify the behavior of the people picker. Now, you're going to notice that STS-ADM has a slightly different syntax than PowerShell. That typically in PowerShell, the way that we do things is with a verb-noun and then whatever parameters it is that we want. With STS-ADM, it's going to be STS-ADM tick O. And then immediately after the O is going to be our operation, and then we go ahead and do the rest. So to a certain extent, you can sort of think of this as that first little part, STS-ADM tick O, and then the name, is going to be our PowerShell commandlet, and then we provide all the parameters after that. Now, the first option that we have available to us is the set site user account directory path. Now, what this is going to do for us is this is going to allow us to limit the searching of our domain to one OU. So what's nice about this is typically you're going to have all of your employees inside of one centralized OU. And so now I can go in and tell SharePoint, hey, this is where you're going to go to look to find those normal people. Now, if I did have any exceptions to that maybe I had my administrative accounts inside of a different OU and I want to make sure that they're going to be searched as well, then what I can do is I can call the STS-ADM again, and this time it's going to be with the people picker service account directory paths, and that's where I can go in and specify where else I want this to look for maybe administrative accounts. Let's go ahead and take a look at how to customize our people picker. I'm going to start off by going to the management shell. What's nice about the management shell is that not only will it bring my PowerShell commandlets to life, but it will also bring STS-ADM to life as well. Now I'm just going to cd backslash and CLS to give myself a little bit more room, and then STS-ADM tick O. And then I want my set site user account directory path. Now, this is actually case insensitive, but I always like to type it like that just to make sure that I've typed it in correctly, because obviously there's quite a bit there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to specify the path that we want this to look in. Now, before I finish this out, let me actually bring up the site so we can kind of see the before and after here. So I'm going to go to my site and I'm going to click share. There's my people picker, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in SQL and let's hit search. And what you'll notice is that this pulled up my SQL agent. And actually, if I went back and typed in SQL again, you'll notice that we get multiple results coming back here. So I have my SQL agent, I've got analysis services, I've got an awful lot of possible options here. So then I don't want those to show up. Those are my service accounts. All of the normal users are inside of an OU called employees. So what I'm going to do on my path is I'm going to say OU equals employees, DC equals Geek Trainer, DC equals com. And then I'm going to specify the URL. So we'll go ahead and say URL, and this is going to be http:// intranet geektrainer.com. And now let's go back to our team site here. And I'm just going to click on the team site home page here just to let it refresh. And then let's hit share again. And now, if I type in SQL, you're going to notice I'm still getting all of my options here. We're going to need an IIS reset. So we'll just go back to Start, IIS Reset, and hit Enter, and we'll give that a moment. Okay, and now let's go back home again. There we go. And let's go back again to share. And if I type in SQL, what I want you to notice is it is still coming back with a result. The reason that it's coming back with a result here is because of the fact that it's just being cached inside of here, that we had used that SQL primary agent once before. But what I want you to notice, which is different from last time, is that when I type in SQL, that all the other results aren't showing up. So you're going to notice that we don't have the analysis services or the reporting services or any of the other accounts showing up inside of there. Or if I typed out SharePoint, for example, what you're going to notice is that I get all users, but I don't get the SharePoint farm accounts. Or if I typed in SP 2013 service, this account exists, but it doesn't exist inside that OU. So what you're going to notice here is that it's not showing up. So by calling that command, that allows me to filter where the people picker is going to look. One of the other things that we may decide to configure security-wise inside of SharePoint is anonymous access. Now, most of the time, we're not going to enable anonymous access, because typically we want to know who our people are. We're going to want to restrict access to only specific users. But there may be times, maybe like with a public-facing site, maybe with a kiosk internal where we're storing information inside of a SharePoint site, where we've got information where we don't need to force the user to authenticate. This is where anonymous access comes into play. Now, in order to set up anonymous access, there's a couple of different spots that I have to go to enable this. The first thing that I need to do is I need to enable this inside of the web application. The reason for that is because, remember, again, the web application plugs into the website inside of IIS. And it's actually up to IIS to authenticate people. So since we have to manage our authentication through IIS, IIS needs to know that we want to do anonymous access. So we'll have to turn that on in the web application. Then we're going to have to go to the site collection and turn it on there. That turning it on at the web application is like kicking the master switch on, but it does not actually make any information available by using anonymous access. We have to go to the site collection and turn it on. Now, at the site collection, we can decide to expose everything, the entire website. We could just do individual lists and libraries, where we then go down to the individual list, the individual library, and control anonymous access. Or we can just simply go with nothing, which, by the way, is the default. Let's take a look at how to set up anonymous access. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back up my browser here. And I'm connected to my intranet site. And I'm going to go back to Settings. I'm going to go to Site Settings. and I'm going to go to Site Permissions. Now, I want you to notice right over here under Manage, there is no option for anonymous access. The reason for that is because I haven't enabled this on the web application yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit my little tab, and I'm going to connect to my central administration site. That's why I always put it on 4242, so I can always remember where it is. Okay, so now let me go to Manage Web Applications, and let me choose my intranet, and I'm going to go to my authentication providers. And now I'm going to enable anonymous access. I'm going to scroll on down and hit Save. And now let's go back to our team site, and let's go ahead and hit refresh here. And this is just going to take a moment. And now you're going to notice that we've got anonymous access. So I'm going to click anonymous access. And now you're going to notice that I can choose whether or not I want to allow for listen libraries, whether or not I want to do it for the entire website. So I'm going to put a little dot next to listen libraries, and I'm going to hit OK. And let's say that what I want to do is I want to expose out our documents for everyone to be able to access. So I'm going to go to my documents here, and I'm going to go to my library, and I'm going to go to my library settings, and I'm going to go to my permissions. And now what you're going to notice is that I've got my anonymous access. Now the reason that anonymous access is showing up is because previously we had turned off inheritance. If I turn back on inheritance and I hit OK, you're going to notice that anonymous access is now not going to be available. So if I want to do anonymous access, what I need to do is say stop inheriting permissions, hit OK, and then now I can go to anonymous access. And now I can control whether or not I want somebody to be able to view our items. The last thing that we want to take a look at in this lesson is how we can control permissions at the web application level. Most commonly, you are going to be applying permissions at the site collection level and lower, but there are going to be times when maybe I don't want certain permissions to be available at all. Or maybe there's going to be times where I globally need to apply a permission. Or maybe there's going to be times when I want to be able to use a deny. And deny is not available to me at the site collection or lower level. It's only available to me at the web application. So let's see exactly that. Now, at the web application, what you're going to notice is that I do have the ability to modify the permission for anonymous access. That what I can do is just simply set no policy, or I could go in and say deny write or deny all. Now, the reason that I might say deny all would be a scenario where maybe we're going to be doing an upgrade and I just want to kick everybody out, or I want to kick out all my anonymous users. So I could just go in, set it with a deny all, and then go back and allow them to have access again a little bit later. My deny write is pretty straightforward because most of the time I'm not going to want my anonymous users to be able to modify data. And then none is just simply no policy. In addition, I can also configure permission policy levels. A permission policy level is a policy level at the web application level. It's basically just like we saw in an earlier lesson where we were able to create permission levels at the site. Here we're going to be creating them at the web application level. Now you're going to notice the four ones that we have built in: full control and full read. And then you're also going to notice that we have deny write and deny all. Yes, that's right. We actually have the ability to deny permissions by using a permission policy level at the web application level. Now, this can be very helpful maybe as a way to take a permission away from somebody, or just to apply a bit of a safety net. So for example, one of the things that's going to need to be done is you're going to need to apply read permissions to the account that's going to be used for crawling for search purposes. And so the easiest way to manage that is to take that account and give it full read at the web application level. But I might decide that just to be on the safe side, that I don't want that to be able to write, so I might choose full read and deny write to make sure that it's not able to make any changes. Now, after we go in and we set up our policy level, then we get to go in and set up our user policy. And this is where we're going to combine that permission policy level with our users or groups. Now, the three components that are going to bring this together are going to be the zone, the user and group, and then the permission level. Now, the permission level is the one that we want to use. The user and groups is who it is that we're talking about. The zone is a bit interesting. If you remember back to our discussion of alternate access mappings, one of the things that I'm able to do is create a zone, which basically means that if you access this web application using this URL or using this URL, that we can do things differently. So for example, if you had a dual home site, so it's accessible from the outside world and accessible internally, and we're doing Windows authentication, so I want my people to be able to edit data, but I only want them to be able to edit data when they are on the local network, then I can set up two zones, where one zone is going to have the URL that's only resolvable internally. The other zone is going to have the URL that's resolvable externally. When you connect through the internal zone, we're going to allow you to do whatever it is that we want. When you connect through the external zone, we're going to apply a deny write permission level. So that way you'll be able to read data, but you're not going to be able to modify data. So why might we decide to do this? Well, we might decide to do this, of course, to make sure that our crawl account has read access, to limit external users to read only, and then the one that I'm going to demo here in just a couple of moments is to allow the help desk to override checkout. One of the things that's very common to do on document libraries is to require check-in, check-out, make sure that only one person is editing a document at any given time. The problem with doing check-in, check-out, however, is that people will quite frequently check out an item and forget about it. And now all of a sudden we've got this item that somebody else needs to modify and they can't because a user has it checked out. So what I could do is I could give the help desk global override checkout permissions by using this user policy setup. Now, the last little thing that I want to touch on is our user permissions. And I know that there's a lot of very common terms here, and hopefully we'll be able to clarify this when I get in and do my demo here in just a moment. But what I want to mention about the user permissions is that this globally allows me to remove permissions. Just take them away. They're just not going to be available. Just boom, gone. Why might we decide to do this? Well, the number one reason to do this is to remove branding capabilities. One of the biggest things that you'll be doing with SharePoint Server is deploying out user profiles in My Sites. My Sites are basically like Facebook inside of SharePoint, so that what my user will get is their own little corner of the world. They get to set up their profile, they get to share information, and so forth. Every My Site is a site collection. And everybody is a site collection administrator of their My Site. And if you remember, SCAs have the ability to do anything. So one of the things they'd be able to do is modify the theme that's being used. Well, now what we're going to wind up going from is Facebook to MySpace. For those of you that remember MySpace, one of the problems with MySpace, and one of the things that turned a lot of people off from it, was that people could go in and do whatever it is that they wanted to the look and feel of their site. And that's not a good way to ensure consistency. So fortunately, we have the ability to take away the branding option, so that way people can't go in and make their sites green and pink and purple and red and whatever else it is that they may want to do. Let's go into Central Administration and take a look at all of these options. So I'm going to go back to my Start menu and go to Central Administration. And I'm going to go to my Manage Web Applications, and I'm going to choose my intranet site. Now, first up, you're going to notice my anonymous policy, and if I hit that, then from here, you'll notice that I've got my options for deny write, deny all, or none. So if I want to make sure that anonymous users are not able to write, put the little dot next to deny write, hit save. Done. Now the next thing is to apply permissions at a global level. So let's take that common scenario where I want somebody in the help desk to be able to override checkout everywhere. The way that I do this is by first setting up my permission policy. So I'm going to go to my permission policy, and I'm going to say add. And I'm going to call this override checkout, able to override checkout. Okay. Now what you're going to notice is that I could actually make them a site collection administrator or an auditor. And then you'll notice that I've got all my different grants and all my different denies. And in my case, what I want is I want my override checkout, which is going to be under my override list behaviors. So I'm just going to put my little check right there, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to hit save. So now I've created my little policy level. Now it's time to assign that to Dave. So let's hit my little user policy. We'll say add users. We'll do for all zones. And let's go ahead and say D. Baxter. And we'll put a little check next to override checkout. Scroll on down and hit finish. And now Dave has the ability to override checkout. Now the last thing that we want to look at is our user permissions. So if we decide that we want to globally take away branding, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click user permissions, and then I'm going to scroll down inside my user permissions. And you'll notice that I've got apply style sheets, I've got apply themes and borders. So I can just take both those checks away, scroll down, and hit save. And just like that, we've seen our user policies, our user permissions, and how to apply settings at a web application level. I'll see you in the next lesson.